Hey folks, Steve here with another Highway to the Kremlin video for you today. We are going to be starting, that's right, turn two after what has been a number of videos getting us through turn one. For this video, we're gonna start with turn two. We may get additional turns into this video because I'm going to revert to my more expedited coverage here, where you're going to trace the progress of the game by watching this video, less me explaining all the mechanics. I've explained a fair bit over the last couple of videos. And at this point, things like activating units, rolling for initiative to activate units, actually moving them, taking attrition, having battles, all of that we've kind of covered. And to be honest, that is basically the game. Now, in the campaign game, there are additional rules that we will talk about when the time comes to play the campaign. But I'm going to play through the rest of the battle scenario and just have some fun with it as best I can, anyway. Um, and we're not going to show each and every little thing. There's a few remaining mechanics that we've not actually seen, like artillery firing and cavalry differentials making a big difference, especially when it comes to artillery. So the first time that that really matters, we will show that and talk to that. But otherwise, we're going to roll our way through here. And at the beginning of turn two, just like the previous turn, we need to roll our weather. And because we are still in August, we're at the end of August. Functionally, we'll roll on that part of the chart. And hope for a 4 or 5 for fair weather. We'll see what we get. and it's mud again. Oy oy oy. Oh, if the previous roll was 1, subtract 1 from the die roll, so it's actually a 0, which is still mud. So it's mud, mud, mud as far as the eye can see. So more. This continues to be a penalty for attrition that we're going to need to watch out for and continue to watch out for. Um, and so it goes. Mud will also affect artillery die rolls when and if they come up. So yeah, okay. Well, I was hoping for better weather, but we'll continue to deal with the mud, I suppose. And really, that just gets us into the Russian player turn, where we need to look at the administrative segment. And really, what that means for us is, do we want to shuffle our unit organization around for those who are already in the same um, the same uh, hexes? And I will say there is an ability, even in the battle scenario, to move our supply source, which is here. Now we could move it back. We can move it back to here. We can move it back to Moscow probably at some point. But if we do that, just FYI, if we were to do that um, during this whole turn here, we would basically not, we would want to move very little because what will be on us is we'll have to roll on the 0 or no line of communication side of the table, which really does create a case where we could have some attrition. But I'd rather move it sooner rather than later because um, if the French can take this hex and take out the supply marker, we're gonna be put in that state when we don't want it to be there. So we either voluntarily move it and help ourselves and make slight adjustments to the game state to be where we want to be, or maybe in the worst case scenario is it gets knocked out and not when we want it to be. So that's sort of the decision here. Um, I'm not sure I actually want to change it yet. And so I think I'm going to wait to change the supply marker location. So I'm going to leave it there. In terms of organization, I think right now the forces as is on the map are about where I want them to be. I will eventually swap them around a little bit once I reconstitute our forces after the movement segment. So I think for the moment we are on good terms with our organization. Technically, I should probably stick this garrison on the organizational displays, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to save my arms some moving around and shift all this stuff as we move because we'll end up needing to shuffle stuff around anyway. So here's a question about what do we do as the Russians on turn two? Well, we have a couple of options. Obviously, we could break forward and try to shape up some concentrated attacks on the French. However, I'm not sure that we need to. As the Russian player, we're actually pretty happy with the game state so far. Like, yeah, sure, out west there was some fighting that was going on that was kind of rough for the Russians as it turned out, but we did just as much strength damage to the French in the main theater of operations, which is what's on camera now. Really, the French have lost 4 steps to attrition, and the Russians haven't really lost anything other than their garrison, but that doesn't count for victory tracking. So right now, I'd say the Russians are just fine to continue to fall backward. I don't see a reason to fight here. We would rather defend in more difficult terrain across rivers and all of that good stuff. Um, rather than simply wait for the the French to fight us in the clear terrain. We want to be on the defense and we want to leverage terrain as much as possible, really. Um, so that is going to be what we try to do here, and we're going to drift backward to that next depot supply source hex, both behind the river and if we can into the woods terrain. Um, and that wood's gonna, make things. Well, actually, the woods are gonna be maybe worse for us. Defending in have infantry and cav halved in woods. So maybe we don't actually want to be in the woods. Yeah, maybe we don't want to be there in the woods. This is going to be tricky. If I'm reading this right, and I guess I think I am. At least I think I am. That the woods defending in your infantry and cav are half strength, attacking into it just the cav are half strength. Which I don't know. For some reason, I would think of woods as more defensive than clear terrain, right? So I don't know. Um, then the question is, can we get set up in a hill anywhere? And to be honest, we don't really have good options for that. So I think we are going to pull back, though exactly where we pull back, I'm not 100% certain of yet, and we'll need to play that by ear as we go. That'll just have to be the opportunity cost here is just to set up in a slightly better place. So that's what I think I'm going to do. Now we have 3 movement commands to do it. So all 3 of our leaders there we can select and we will get to move. None of the other leaders outside of this camera frame are in command, so they can't use the movement commands anyway. They're basically running off initiative, and their initiatives are really not very good, and I don't expect to use them very much, or whatever they do is going to be very limited either way we look at it. So um, I'm going to go ahead and because this is the expedited format, I'm going to take a break on recording and I will move the Russians. We will do attrition and you'll see the end result, which is mostly going to be pulling back to this point, basically. It's only moving, a couple of hexes, so the attrition will be very minimal, even in the mud, and we should be in a just fine state. Configured a bit differently, like um, Bagration may now be stacked with Kutuzov is probably what's going to happen. So we've got like two supporting stacks. That'll probably be how that works. So, all right, let me go do that. Okay, all done with the Russian movement. There's not much to talk about here. All the Russian leaders outside the immediate area of operations failed their initiative, and but likewise didn't take any attrition. So pretty quiet besides the main theater of operations, and all the Russians here safely with no attrition retreated backwards. But Bagration is now under the command of Kutuzov there in this hex. We continue to have Barclay here um, holding the garrison and across the river. And both of these stacks can mutually support one another, essentially. So if we feel the need during a forced march on the French turn, we can try to get a leader moved over to the other stack potentially. So depending on where the French want to engage, we can deal with that. Now, if we end up having a fight and retreat backwards towards the Borodino area itself, then we'll do that as the Russians. But just depending on how the French decide to come at them, we may decide to do a pitched battle, I guess. I don't know for sure yet, but this is a good spot for the Russian army to be kind of congregated with some defensive terrain and kind of holding a pretty good spot. And really, the French can't afford to bypass them over here because it's going to be slow going and they would be able to come and disrupt their line of communication. Uh, so, really, the French are going to have to push their way through. Now, we are getting to the French forced march phase. Right now, there'd be no combats on the map at all, and so essentially there won't be any. But the French forces could activate and move forward. I need to look really critically at the attrition table and figure out, like, let's say I roll a 6 every time I move a force. What kind of attrition am I going to take? Can I find any situations where, let's assume I get the activation via initiative, can I move a few of my stacks, even one movement point along the main road, so I can establish a garrison depot and have to spend less movement points on the French turn to actually engage the Russian army. So, likewise, I'm going to do a cut here. I'm going to go figure that out for the French. It's going to take a little bit more thinking on what we want to do here, and then we'll go from there basically. So yeah, let's see. Okay, here we are after the French forced march, and very fortunately, oh, I forgot to drop one of Nay's. Okay. There we go. We drop a garrison at Vyazma, and Ney is now subordinate to Davout. Miraz got sort of a flank position. Napoleon's marching up the main path. Eugene failed to activate, so did our Polish commander here. Saint-Cyr, way outside of communication, succeeded. And each of these, all of these formations tried to move basically 2 or less movement points and managed to get good, decent die rolls where we did not take any attrition. Though Napoleon was a near run thing, we were fortunate there. So, else we would have lost the rest of our artillery. Um, so that's all good. Now, I didn't check for our cav. So our cav activates, and when I really look at it, we could. We don't want to go very far with our cav. So again, thinking like if we lose one step, we're in deep trouble. And knowing that we're rolling on the 4 to 6 APs, and the size of our force is a 1, we just so long as we're careful. um, so long as we're careful, um, we could move a little bit. So let me see how this goes, because what we want to do is kind of guard a flank position, but our flank is changing as we're operating. Um, so what I might do is say go 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe even just up to here. And so that would be 2. Roll attrition. Let's see. So that would be 7, 7, which moving 2 movement points, yeah, is 0. So that's fine. And if we were to roll to activate our other Major General for cavalry, we don't activate him. So that's it. So yeah, a fair progression there. Again, we would progress to the Russian combat phase, of which there are no valid combats on the board. None of these guys are in any Zocs. And we get over to the French administrative segment. Now here, I don't see how fast we're moving here, guys. Like without explaining everything and just doing it off camera, we're talking about just a couple minutes to describe what's already occurred, and that's in fair detail rather than walking through each step. So it's already the second half of turn 2 as the French go. I don't see a great need to shuffle my units around. The only thing that I might do is make a sacrifice here. And I'm going to show you the organizational display to talk about this. So we've got Napoleon here, and he's got artillery and cav. We also have these forces here. And what I'm trying to figure out is, can I try to transfer um, strength between units? Because what I would love to do is decrease Junot a little bit, maybe even remove this, because then the 2 steps still exist in the stack, but we're more efficient with our command span, and Napoleon may need to take control of another leader and his subordinate units here for long. Okay, here's our problem. This is young guard, and then that is old guard, and guard units can't be transferred to, and I don't want to transfer them from Junot. So, right, I can't transfer from Junot to the guard. I can transfer from the guard to Junot, but I don't want to do that, just due to the guard capability. So I think I'm just going to be. I've got a challenge there, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, well, I could solve this with other ways, but not in this segment, unfortunately. I can maybe look at doing that as these units move, and I could stick Junot with another leader and trade him out for a different stack, and kind of work it out separately. But for now, we'll operate that Napoleon can take care of himself, at least for the moment, which is going to put us in the movement command. Now, again, we only have 2 movement commands here from now on. So what I may do, just looking at the map, is figure I'm probably going to get to activate these guys. Maybe not Murat, so this is the risk I'm taking. But if I activate our Poles and Eugene, I would want to use them to come forward a bit more if I could help it. Because Eugene could actually, as I look at the game state situation, um, let's see, th- 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could put Eugene subordinate to Napoleon and just bring up some additional strength that way. Um, and what I need to do is think about where do I expect to end up and operate. So who do I want to attack is really what's going to matter here. So our Russian command, if we use a movement command on him, he'll probably go, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to put him somewhere to where he's holding a flank a little bit. So he's not. If we use our movement command on our Polish force, he's just going to move up to watch the flank. He doesn't have a lot of strength points. I'm not going to rely on him, to hold the whole line. But he's a backstop, and he can get into a group with another leader that may need more help or strength points functionally. So we'll keep him open. I need to use Eugene's movement command and basically get him in a position to attack one of these Russian stacks. That's basically what we're going to aim to do. And I kind of want him to be wherever Napoleon will be so Napoleon can command him. So we're kind of like combining our units. The danger would be, what if one of my French forces fails to activate? That could be the great, great danger that we're worried about. But Napoleon has plenty of command span to be working with. So what I think I may try to do here is focus effort on Kutuzov's stack first and follow up with future attacks on Barclay's force with the hope that we really spank Kutuzov hard, is my hope. So I'm going to try to do something like that, right? So this is just the movement phase. I'm going to go operate and do that, um, and we'll see where we get to. Okay, here we are after the French movement. Actually managed to get good avoidance of attrition. Nobody lost anything, and we've approached a battle on the left flank, the southern flank of Kutuzov's position. Now we've moved Murat up to cover the primary road, so fight a cavalry rearguard action if the Russians were to try to counterattack if this battle doesn't go well, because we're kind of leaving the main road to avoid crossing a river to attack Kutuzov. Um, we have our Poles bringing up our right flank, watching this primary road here towards Kaluga. We also have our major general with cavalry holding up the northern road there and potentially cutting off the Russians. Not that they're going to go in that direction, but just so we're advancing and watching our wide flanks, awfully wide. Now, what we did is we did successfully get with a movement command Eugene into this hex, and then the rest of our leaders, Murat, Davout is here, and Napoleon, were all able to activate. There is something that I may have made a mistake in a previous part of the video or previous video where if you roll exactly the leader's initiative, you actually lose a movement point. Uh, and that occurred here, but they got everywhere that they wanted to be and again avoided attrition. So I'll also point out Saint-Cyr is also advancing against the Russian force there, just to have a side adventure, honestly, at this point. Um, and really, we're going to wait to see what happens. So that's it for uh, um, the French movement. This is all pretty basic. This was reasonably fast, other than just the calculus. Having to do a die roll after every move is a little, monotonous, but it's not so bad. It happens pretty quick, and if you know what your die roll modifiers are, you have a pretty good idea, and the size of the force, you know where you're going to be at on the table, so it's a pretty quick check. Now I have moved into the Zok of Kutuzov's army, so we're going to aim to engage, and it's now going to flip over to the Russian side that are going to need to decide on a forced march what they want to do. And really now, like the French want to do some damage if they can. That's their goal. The Russians have to make some decisions. So right now, Kutuzov's got some force there. He could try to get an initiative roll to get away. The key thing here is in any combat, Napoleon's going to be able to include Davout's force in it, a multi-hex force, because he basically took Eugene out of command and has Eugene's combat unit reporting to him directly on Napoleon's organizational display, which is cheaper on the subordination value. And so Napoleon has 10 command subordination weight in his hex, which leaves 2 of his command span left over, which means he can command Davout in the next hex. So for the Russians, like, basically Napoleon wants to bring all of that force to bear. He's going to be able to do that, but the Russians have to decide, are they going to try to get away right now? And they could try to roll and maneuver Kutuzov back. And that might be the right thing to do. Or they stick and they maybe try to have a fight. And the question would be, well, if they were to fight, would it be a pursuit, where they just get bounced back and retreat, which maybe would leave them out of position from being close to Barclay, or if they did a pitched battle, would it even be worth fighting the pitched battle if, unless they can call in a buddy from Barclay's stack to reinforce them with a forced march and build up the stack. That's sort of the tough decision that the Russians now need to make. Like, there is a movement of French troops. There is going to be potentially a battle unless the Russians choose to pull away and try to run away and see if they can actually succeed in doing that. So let me look at the composition of the Russian forces nearby here, and Kutuzov is going to have to make a quick decision in a 5-10 minute span of what he wants to do. Does he want to pull back just out the gate? Does he want to try to call in some reinforcements from Barclay's stack? Not everybody from Barclay's stack is going to fit in Kutuzov's command span, so that's part of the trouble here. Like, there's not going to be a perfect, the Russians are all in it all at once. Potentially we're going to have to look at, like, what can we pull in. Okay, based on the composition of uh, Barclay's force, we actually can't convincingly get a segment of his force to reinforce Kutuzov, um, largely because we've just got too many units that have a funky subordination amount, and to try to move a major general over, like, just it's in a weird configuration. This is where the subordination values get tricky. So, like, Barclay can't really get help to Kutuzov right now. We'll call it a weakness of command structure. So I think Kutuzov would say, let's pull back. Let's see if we can't pull back a hex, and that will put the French kind of out of position for their attack, and that will allow the Russians to kind of regroup back towards Borodino. That might be of value. Now, to do this, Kutuzov has to pass his initiative die roll, right? To activate a leader, we would need that to take place. So it's a question, really, of, would we bother to move Barclay's stack? I think we would wait to try to move Barclay's stack and see if we can get Kutuzov out of there. So Kutuzov's initiative rating is a 4, which is pretty good, right? We have a decent chance, but because Kutuzov is in the Zok of leaders, he has to deal with the resistance modifier to his attempt to activate. So to get out of the Zok, you'd have to spend some movement points to get out of the Zok and then move away, basically. It's kind of the ideal. Or to just disengage, I guess. We could maybe move out of the Zok and stay in the Hex. That'd be kind of interesting. but we got the resistance modifier. So this is similar to what happens with pursuit. We look at the leader's initiatives, and for this we have Kutuzov's 4 compared to Napoleon or Davout for that matters 5, and that's a 2. That's a positive 2. So we would have to add 2 to the die roll, which means that it's possible that Kutuzov, while maybe ordinarily has a decent chance to activate, that a +2 is going to make that much harder. Basically, most die roll it goes from like high likelihood that he's going to activate and do something to greater chance that he's not going to get to activate. So we'll roll the dice, add 2. And yeah, we rolled a 4, which ordinarily would be an activation, but add 2, it's now a 6. He fails to get out of there, which means that really our only hope is to try to figure out some way that we can refinagle Barclay's forced to try to get somebody in there, and I don't see a good way to do it. To move a combat unit from Barclay's stack requires us to either activate one of the subordinate leaders with Barclay or Barclay himself, and to send a force over. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to really do that because we're going to be limited in what we can send. Period. So I need to look at what are our chances here. What we could do, I guess, is we could ideally activate Barclay. He could command some subordinate major general unit and send them over maybe into the hex, and that would be the hope to kind of buff up Kutuzov's strength points, because right now it's going to turn out to be something like 1-to-1 odds. I think the French are going to have 17 to 12 on the Russian side, which while that's higher than 1-to-1, it's going to reduce down to 1-to-1. So it's a question like, would we even bother trying to send more forces in there that could end up getting chewed up? So I'm thinking maybe we actually don't, and we hold position for Barclay. So let's just see what we can do. I'm a little worried about this, but I'm not sure that Barclay wants to send some units over that aren't going to make a real difference. Maybe I need to think on this. Okay, I think I found a way to make this work. If I activate Barclay and move him into Bagration's hex and drop off a unit, I think I can do it. I think what's going to matter is whether or not I actually activate Barclay, which might be something I need to see about anyway. Okay, so Barclay does activate. He can do something, and so I'm wondering if I can make this work. If I move his whole stack to here and drop somebody off. Oh, wait, that's our supply. Okay. If I go 1, 2, and give him somebody, I think I could do that. It's a bit tricky. What I would want to do for this big battle is give him Barclay's artillery. And maybe some infantry just to help out. All right, so here's the problem for Mr. Barclay. If we were to move his whole stack into Kutuzov's hex and to get them in the combat, we need to get in the Zok. That means we have to stop moving. So I can't simply drop off the artillery. It would become that the whole stack becomes engaged, and we really can't afford to be insubordinately stacked, so to speak. So this is going to be a problem for the Russians. there might be some nuanced ways and interpretation of the rules to try to figure out some way to get reinforcements into Kutuzov's hex, but I can't really find it. So, as best as we can do right now, I'm going to simply leave Barclay where he is. Um, and the general that was opposing Saint Cyr failed to activate and couldn't get away. So, we're going to have some combats. Um, because what I'm probably going to do is take care of Saint Cyr's and I'm sure I'm not saying that right. His combat, and then we'll come back over here. I think this is going to be an important combat, no matter which way we look at it, because we are going to be dealing with some artillery from the French, which we've not seen. It would have been good to get the Russian artillery in place, but we failed to do that. I probably should have thought about that maybe as the Russians, but hey, we got to make mistakes or else the game can't be played, right? You got to play. So um, let's take a look at what's going to happen over here because I think this is going to be a very straightforward combat, and we'll see. We'll see where things end up. But basically, this combat is simply going to be uh, 4 strength points fighting against um, 3 strength points. So it's basically a 1-to-1 sort of situation. Not ideal. Um, for the French, but really we're just doing this to keep ourselves occupied back here. Um, so yeah, non-affecting terrain, and Saint Cyr's not a particularly great leader, so it's just at least in this game. Um, so just going to be a straight up die roll. I guess we want to roll low. We want to roll a 1. Um, and we roll a 1. Okay, so 1-to-1. Oh, we need. I guess he would almost assuredly been a runaway battle type where Sancerre would want the same. So they're both doing pursuit. I should mention. So this is a one. I'm sorry, a 1-to-2 losses. So we're going to have to retreat 2. We're going to take 1 off of his. And then the pursuit. So initiative of 4. Treating hexes is 2. Unfortunately, because it's 4-to-4, this is a +2 to the die roll. I don't think we're going to be able to go very far. And in fact, only if I roll a 1. No, I rolled a 2. +2 is 4. Oh no, okay. So that will cause a step loss. Um, a step loss. And we can pursue 1 basically. So we've got that crossroads under our control. So that wasn't super exciting. We basically it was a 2-hex retreat. We got to pursue for 1 hex and do 1 loss to Wittgenstein's force. They would have to lose at least 1 anyway, even if there wasn't a pursuit, because the loser in this case has to at least take as many losses as the winner. So really, it's like, if this attrition fight goes all the way down, if this were to happen again in this realm, it would be um, uh, what right now the next fight would be 3-2. So then it would, if we had the exact same result, I guess it would be 2-1 for the French side on the third combat. So really, just whittling away the Russian force here and playing for position. Not a big deal. But let's talk about, again, this more important combat that we need to do. Okay, just given the estimated strength of the opposing forces here, I think the Russians are going to choose a pursuit type of battle position because while that might leave Barclay in trouble, they'll be able to go on their next turn and kind of refigure out how they want to operate and maybe prepare better. So that will be fine. The French are going to pick pitched battle just in the odd case that they foul up. They're hoping to win the day with an extended battle, if that's what it comes down to. Because as of right now, they do have a strength point advantage for this combat, so that's the hope and the dream. I'm not sure if that's the optimal choice here, but we don't mind ripping to shred the uh, the Russians here if we can make it really work for us. So because of this is going to be a more complex battle because we do have artillery, so that's going to be worth showing in a bit more detail here as we get going. And I'm going to want to make sure I'm referencing the rules carefully along the way. So we designated our attacking force, the guys in the Zok. We've got the defending force. We have approximate SPs, and then ultimately, if we were doing this, we would say it would be like 15 to 10. The reality is it's 17 to 12. Um, we've selected our battle type, and then we have a cavalry differential. So we compare the actual amount of cavalry in both the attacking and defending forces. If either force has a SP, has 3 SP or greater cavalry advantage, then subtract 1 from the bombardment die roll. But here, if I were to just look, really there's just 1 strength point of cavalry from Napoleon's stack. Maybe we would be pushing that advantage if we chose to include Murat instead of Davout here, but such it goes. And then for Kutuzov, he has he has 1 cavalry as well. So there is no cavalry advantage. If I look across the whole stack for Kutuzov, yeah, it's just one cavalry strength point. So no differential is going to come into play here. But now we have the artillery bombardment. Now both players determine the amount of artillery SPs in their forces. The attacker resolves his fire first, then the defender. It's based solely on the number of cavalry SPs firing and not based on an odds ratio. So it is a firepower based die roll. So unfortunately for the Russians, they don't have any, which is too bad. But for the French, we do have 1, and it would have been 2 if not for attrition, earlier attrition. So we have a artillery fire table here. Again, we have one artillery strength, and up the mud with the leader bonus. But even if we rolled a 1 plus 1, unfortunately, the mud is our real problem. If we didn't have mud, and this might have been a fine reason to wait to engage the Russians, if we had better cavalry advantage, better artillery advantage, cavalry advantage, it might have been possible to roll a 1 is what we would have had to have rolled. So this is really not the turn for artillery, but because we had it and it was worth looking at the cavalry differential, we could see what would happen there now. Let's say we did, if all those things were true and we rolled a 1 and we scored the result of 1 on that table, well, what all that would do is eliminate 1 strength point from the Russian stack. That would not do enough to shift the combat odds, but hey, you want to inflict what damage you can when you can. That's kind of the best thing that we could hope for here. So yeah, too bad for that. Would have been interesting if we would have gotten something off there. Now, otherwise, it's an odds determination. Again, we determined that the Russians have, I believe it's 12. We'll double check one more time. 3, 8. Yeah, 12, because there is a garrison with Kutuzov's forces on his display, and then Napoleon having, I believe it's 17 total with the inclusion of Davout's strength. So yeah, 5, 10, 16, 17. Yeah, you don't count artillery again. It's just the strength points of the rest of your forces, I believe. And I guess even if it was, it wouldn't make a big difference here. There is no 3 to 2 spot on the combat results table. So in this case, we are going to be rolling effectively on the one-to-one terrain not affecting table. Double check that, right? Yeah. And let's see, any other modifiers? Leader bonus, we'll have a -1 from the die roll for Napoleon. And I think that's it. So yeah, we're going to hope to roll very low here. This might be a very important battle for us, but we'll see. And now I could try to push us into a pitched battle by forcing myself to roll poorly. And that actually, this might be one of those cases where it would be helpful um, to do that. Because if we did, let's say, well, 17 to 12, it's 1-1. If we lost, and we lost fairly by just say a 1-1 loss, what would happen? Well, that would force it down to 16 to 11. Then 11 attacking 16 would be on the 1-2 and would very likely lead to maybe very painful attacking on the Russian side, and then we'd go at it again maybe. So this is the weird, tricky part of this combat system, guys. It truly is. Of like, does it make sense for us to intentionally draw the Russians into a combat? It's like a feint, right? If I add Napoleon's bonus to our die roll rather than subtract it, would that, in the long scheme of things here, help us? Because the Russian counterattack could prove to be very poor. The other problem would be like, well, what if the Russians on the counterattack roll really good? Um, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? And it is conceivable that they could do that. Not high, but it is possible for that to occur. So how much do we really want to do this? I'm willing to take a gamble here, and let's roll the die and add Napoleon's bonus just to see what happens. All right, here we go. Adding 1. All right. I rolled a 1, so we actually are only making our victory somewhat worse. All right, fair enough. I guess if we had, yeah, that was dumb. Okay. So we're it's a 2-1, so we're gonna lose 1 off Eugene's combat unit, and then we're gonna have these guys retreat twice like that, 2 hexes. Unfortunately, I can't imagine that we're going to be able to. Well, let's see. Active pursuing 5-4 is only adding 1, so it is possible that we could get a decent pursuit here, and we got it, I think. So we rolled a 1 on the pursuit table. This was a retreat of 2 hexes, which is so 1 plus 1 is 2. And on that is a 2 pursuit, which means while we lose 1, the Russians are going to have to lose 2, which is not so bad. So they lose 2 strength points. Again, not enough to be a big major victory or anything, but something to watch out for. And now we need to pursue, and pursuing with a multi-hex force is one maybe we've not done yet. All right, let me see this. Okay, so the way that I am going to try to interpret this is we can pursue out 2, and we could simply say he pursues up 1. and be in a fine place here, though awfully spread out on the map. And that's the pursuit over. So, yeah, we might have been better off if we had decided to do a -1 instead of the +1, trying to draw the Russians into a big battle. Um, we we would have not lost a strength point, and we would have dealt to the Russians, which would have advantaged us certainly. Our problem here, I had double checked the rules, in that cut there. It's probably a good thing that I didn't draw into a pitched battle, because the two hexes situation would have allowed Kutuzov to counterattack just one of our hexes. I think he could have counterattacked Davu in a vacuum, and that would have caused a great deal of pain effectively, with with um, them having a 2-to-1 odds attack on Davu, and they could have very likely have hurt Davu pretty badly. So it's probably a good thing ultimately that I rolled what I did. For the French, what I shouldn't have done was risk it at all, and I should have used Napoleon's bonus as a -1 to my die roll, and just gone for the natural win, and we didn't get that. Now we're in this kind of weird position now with Barclay's stack, kind of maybe being able to push on any of the other surrounding forces. So we're kind of in this weird configuration, that could actually harm the French pretty badly if the Russians are able to maneuver in a particular way, I guess. So this is kind of a tricky problem now that's going to have to get to the Russians are going to have to decide what they want to do. Do they want to team up and beat up Napoleon? Is that going to be worthwhile? Do they want to focus maybe on Murat's stack? Um, that's going to be the hard thing to decide. So maybe this attack wasn't quite the awesomeness that I was hoping it would be. Again, it's like it's attritional. We're pushing the Russians back. The Russians can afford to do that functionally. So as we tally losses, it is getting even, but it is a total of 5 Russian losses to 8 French losses. So the French are still going to have to make up the difference somehow, and possibly them about to be getting outflanked will cause the need to shift something. We'll see. All right, let's put a pin in this one. Yeah, I think we're gonna let this one now transition into what will be basically turn 3. I think this video is long enough, so we'll call this turn 2. We covered both sides, maybe not in the greatest of detail, and still I'm fumbling around with these rules because they are a bit clunky. But the situation is definitely manifesting into something here where we're starting to run out of space between the French position in Moscow and a need for Barclay to move. And in fact, the Russians are going to have to be careful because their supply marker, as defined in this scenario, is right here and is under threat. And they can either move it themselves or deal with it being removed for them, and having to deal with that. I'm not sure it's a huge loss either way, but it's almost unavoidable that the Russians are going to have to deal with not having their supply marker where they want, which means poor attrition die rolls. But the Russians have kind of avoided the worst of attrition at this point anyway. So there you go, guys. Turn 2's in the bag. We're getting closer to the area that is Borodino. We're getting closer to Moscow, but we still will have 1, 2, 3, 4 more turns to cover. I'm going to try in the next video, because we've kind of shown the tables for artillery and cavalry differential and things that can help. If you have more cavalry than your opponent, then you get a better chance of hitting with your artillery, all that good stuff. But we're going to need to figure this bit out in good time here. So let me go try to figure this out. I think I do need to check my artillery location, because I'm not sure that the artillery can pursue. So I'm going to have to probably move the artillery back someplace, which is fine. We'll deal with that as the time comes. So I'll fix that before the next video, but we'll see you in the next one for turn 3. Take care. Keep on gaming.